In 2003, astronomers pointed the Chandra X-ray Observatory toward a cluster of galaxies 250 million light-years away. They weren't looking for sound. They weren't expecting to hear anything, because everyone knows space is silent. That's the rule. That's what we've been told since we were children. No air, no medium, no sound. Except that's not entirely true. And what they found that day changed how we think about the universe. They recorded something that had been screaming into the void for 2.5 billion years. And when NASA finally let the world hear it in August of 2022, people couldn't sleep. I want you to do something for me. I want you to think about the last time you felt truly alone. Maybe you were in your house at 3 in the morning. The power was out. The world was completely quiet. And in that silence, you heard something you couldn't explain. A creak. A whisper. Something that didn't belong. That primal fear you felt in that moment? That's not random. That's millions of years of evolution screaming at you that silence isn't natural. That when things go too quiet, something is wrong. Something is watching. Something is waiting. Now imagine that feeling, but you're not in your house. You're floating in the infinite blackness between galaxies. And the silence isn't just around you. It extends for trillions of miles in every direction. Nothing but void. Nothing but cold. Nothing but the slow realization that you are more alone than any human being has ever been in the history of our species. That is space. That is what astronauts face every single day. And for decades, we believed that silence was absolute. We believed that the universe had no voice. We were wrong. The Perseus cluster sits 250 million light-years from Earth. It's not just one galaxy. It's over 1,000 galaxies, all bound together by gravity, all swirling around a supermassive black hole that weighs approximately 340 million times more than our Sun. This black hole has been feeding for billions of years, consuming stars, destroying worlds. And in September of 2003, astronomers using the Chandra X-ray Observatory discovered something impossible. They found ripples in the hot gas surrounding this cosmic monster. Pressure waves. The same phenomenon that allows sound to travel through air on Earth. But these weren't ordinary pressure waves. The frequency was so low, so impossibly deep, that no human ear could ever perceive it naturally. The note being produced by this black hole is a B-flat, but it's 57 octaves below middle C on a piano. To put that in perspective, the deepest note a human can hear is about 20 Hz. The lowest note on a piano is about 27 Hz. The note coming from this black hole has a frequency of approximately 1 oscillation every 10 million years. One single vibration taking longer than humans have existed as a species. It is, quite literally, the lowest note ever detected in the universe. Now here's where things get interesting. For almost 20 years, this data just sat there. Scientists knew about the pressure waves. They had published papers about them. But nobody had ever thought to translate them into something humans could actually hear. Sound, after all, needs to be raised to the audible spectrum. It needs to be shifted up to a frequency our ears can process. So in August of 2022, NASA did exactly that. They took the data from Chandra. They scaled the frequency up by 57 octaves. 57 octaves. That's more than the entire range of human hearing raised to that power. They mapped the pressure waves to audible sound. And they released it to the public. What people heard was not music. It was not a gentle hum. It was not what anyone expected. It sounded like screaming. It sounded like moaning. It sounded like millions of voices crying out in agony from across the universe. Deep, guttural, resonant. A sound that seemed to come from the throat of something ancient and hungry. Comments flooded social media. People described it as hellish, demonic, alive. Some people genuinely couldn't listen to the full recording. They had to turn it off. Not because it was loud. It wasn't. It was quiet, actually, almost gentle in its volume. But something about it triggered that primal part of our brain. The part that recognizes danger before our conscious mind can process it. The part that kept our ancestors alive in the darkness of prehistoric nights. But here's what made it even more unsettling. This sound isn't new. These pressure waves have been emanating from that black hole for approximately 2.5 billion years. Since before complex life even existed on Earth. Since before the first fish crawled onto land. Since before the dinosaurs rose and fell and were forgotten by time. This black hole has been singing its terrible song into the cosmos, and we only just now developed the technology to hear it. Which raises a question that I think about every single night. What else is out there making sounds we can't hear? What other cosmic horrors are screaming into the void right now? Their voices too deep or too high for human perception. We're deaf to most of the universe. We always have been. And maybe, just maybe, that's a mercy. The Perseus Cluster black hole isn't the only thing we've heard from space. In April of 2002, the Cassini spacecraft began its journey to Saturn. And when it arrived, it detected something that still gives scientists chills. Radio emissions from Saturn's poles. Now, radio waves aren't sound waves. They're electromagnetic radiation. But when NASA converted these radio emissions to audio format, the result was unlike anything they had ever recorded. It sounded like a haunted transmission from an abandoned spacecraft. Static and whispers and something that resembled breathing. Long, drawn-out exhalations of a sleeping giant. Some listeners described it as the sound of souls trapped in ice. Others said it was like hearing the planet itself dreaming. Whatever it was real. It was recorded by one of our spacecraft. And Saturn has been making these sounds for longer than humanity has existed. Then there's Comet 67P. In 2014, the European Space Agency's Rosetta mission made history by landing a probe on a comet for the first time. But before they even touched down, they detected something strange. The comet was singing. Oscillations in its magnetic field were producing a distinct sound. When converted to audio, it was high-pitched and rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, or like something tapping against the hull of a spaceship from the outside, wanting to be let in. Scientists explained it as the interaction between the comet's coma and the solar wind. A perfectly natural phenomenon, completely understood. And yet, when you listen to that recording alone in the dark, your rational mind starts to negotiate with your instincts. It starts to wonder if perfectly natural is just something we tell ourselves to sleep better at night. Even Earth makes sounds that don't belong. NASA's Van Allen probes, launched in 2012, recorded electromagnetic waves in Earth's radiation belts. When converted to audio, these chorus waves sound like birds chirping, like morning in a forest you've never visited. Scientists were fascinated. They had expected harsh static or rhythmic pulses. Instead, they got something almost beautiful, almost welcoming, and that made them uncomfortable. Because why would the death zone of radiation surrounding our planet sound like a sunrise? What possible explanation could there be for something so hostile creating something so peaceful? They don't have a complete answer. Not really. They have theories. Electrons trapped in magnetic fields, oscillating at frequencies that happen to mimic organic life. Cosmic coincidence. But standing at the edge of space, listening to our own planet sing songs we never knew existed, you start to wonder about coincidences. You start to wonder about design. Here's what keeps me up at night. We've only been listening to space for about 60 years. That's it. 6 decades of data from a universe that's 13.8 billion years old. We've captured a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what's out there. And in that impossibly tiny window of observation, We've already found black holes screaming at frequencies that shouldn't be possible, planets whispering like haunted houses, comets singing to themselves in the frozen dark, and our own world humming melodies we never asked for. What will we find in the next 60 years? What sounds are waiting for us in the places we haven't looked yet? What happens when we point our instruments at the truly dark regions of the universe? The voids between galaxy clusters where nothing should exist. The spaces so empty that light itself gives up. Are they silent? I used to believe they were. I don't anymore. The thing about space that I've learned after years of study, after countless hours reading research papers and listening to recordings and staring at data, is that it's not hostile in the way we imagined. It's not actively trying to kill us, but it's also not silent. It's not peaceful. It's not the empty vacuum we were promised. It's full of sounds we can't hear, signals we can't decode, and messages we might not want to understand. The universe is talking. It has been talking for billions of years, and we just put our ear to the door for the first time. What scares me isn't what we've heard so far. What scares me is that we've only just started listening. But there's one more thing. One more detail that I haven't told you yet. The recording from the Perseus cluster black hole, the one that sounds like screaming, it's not actually the black hole itself. It's the sound of matter being ripped apart as it falls toward the event horizon. It's the death cry of stars and planets and moons being consumed by something so massive that not even light can escape its hunger. When you listen to that recording, you're not hearing a monster. You're hearing its victims. You're hearing the last moments of cosmic objects that existed for millions of years before being erased from reality. And they're still screaming. They've been screaming for 2.5 billion years. And they will keep screaming long after humanity is gone. Long after Earth is consumed by our expanding sun. Long after everything we've ever known or loved or feared has returned to stardust. That black hole will still be singing its terrible song. And maybe, somewhere in the distant future, something else will learn to listen. Something else will hear those screams and wonder what made them. Something else will feel that primal chill we feel when we hear it today. Or maybe not. Maybe we're the only ones who will ever know. Maybe that's the scariest thought of all. There's a lot we still don't understand about what we've recorded. Scientists are still analyzing the Perseus data. They're still finding new frequencies in the Saturn recordings. They're still debating whether some of these sounds have been enhanced or if they're pure translations of the original data. But here's what I want to know from you. I want to know what you think. If you could point a microphone at any object in the universe, any planet or star or black hole or nebula, what would you want to hear? And more importantly, what are you afraid you might hear if you actually listened? Because that question right there is the real frontier of space exploration. It's not about what we can see anymore. It's about what we can hear. And I have a feeling we're not going to like everything that answers.